It was a dumb accident. One of those moments that changes everything and starts with something as ordinary as checking the weather. I'd grabbed the iPad from the kitchen counter to see if the rain would hold off for the weekend. Janine's big retirement party was coming up, and I was still figuring out whether to rent the tents or just trust the forecast. I swiped open the screen, tapped the weather app, and saw a banner notification pop up at the top. Can't wait to see you again. Thursday can't come fast enough. It was from someone named Martin. I almost ignored it, thought it was spam or a calendar reminder. But then the preview continued. Still thinking about that dress and everything underneath it. My stomach went cold. That wasn't a weather alert. That was something else. Now, I've never been one to pry. I trusted Janine. Married 34 years. We raised 2 kids, paid off the mortgage, celebrated every anniversary with a dinner at the same little steakhouse where we had our first date. She was retiring next week from the community college, 27 years teaching English composition. I was already retired myself, former firefighter. Life had slowed down, but in a good way. At least, that's what I thought. I tapped the message by instinct. It opened her email, still logged in, still wide open. The thread was long. Dozens of emails, some with subject lines like, "Last Tuesday was incredible and still taste you." I shouldn't have read them, but I did. They weren't vague. They weren't misunderstood jokes. They were specific, graphic, and they stretched back almost 6 months. Hotel names. Days she said she was at faculty meetings. One message even mentioned how excited she was that I was so trusting. He wrote back that I sounded like a boring sweet guy, and she said, "That's exactly what makes it easy. That one hurt more than the rest." I didn't say anything right away. I didn't throw the iPad or scream or call her phone. I just stood there in the kitchen, coffee going cold in my cup, refrigerator humming behind me, and felt like the house around me wasn't mine anymore. Like I'd woken up inside someone else's life. At some point, I sat down. Don't remember when or how. The dog came over and laid his head on my knee, like he knew something was wrong. She came home about an hour later. "Hey, babe," she said, kicking off her heels like always. "You figure out the weather thing?" I looked at her. Same smile, same voice. The woman I'd eaten toast beside for over 3 decades. And now I couldn't even see her the same way. "Not yet," I said, still checking. She kissed me on the cheek. I didn't flinch. Didn't give anything away. "Not yet." She went upstairs to change. I stared at the stairs after her, like they might collapse. And in a way, they already had. The next morning, she told me she wanted the seafood place to cater her party, not Italian like we'd originally planned. "You okay with that?" she asked, pouring herself a cup of tea. I nodded. "Sure," I said. "It's your day. You should have it your way." She smiled. "You're such a good man, Tom." I smiled back, and that's when I decided. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg, or cry, or even confront her. Not yet. If she thought I was boring and sweet, I'd let her keep thinking that. Let her laugh about how trusting I was. Let her believe I'd never see it coming. She had a celebration coming up, one she cared a lot about. Her boss was flying in, friends from out of town. Half the college was attending. If she wanted a toast, she'd get one. But it wasn't going to be the one she expected. It's a strange thing, pretending to be happy when your heart's been ripped out and stomped on. But that's what I did. For 6 straight days. I played the role, the good husband, the quiet helper. Janine would come downstairs in the mornings, still in that blue robe she's had for years, sipping her tea like everything was right with the world. And I'd smile. I'd ask what she needed for the party. I'd go pick up supplies, coordinate the rental chairs, call the caterer she wanted. "You're spoiling me," she said one night, laughing as I carried in 3 cases of champagne. She had no idea. And that's the part that surprised me most, how easy it was for her to smile, to kiss me on the cheek, to plan this party with the man she was cheating on. I wasn't sleeping much. I'd lie there beside her, staring at the ceiling while she snored lightly. Sometimes she'd roll over and throw an arm across me like she used to. And I'd lay still, heart pounding, wondering if she could feel the difference in me, if she even noticed. She didn't. 3 nights in, I got up around 2 a.m. and went out to the garage. That's where I kept the old wooden toolbox I inherited from my father. But I wasn't looking for a wrench. Inside the bottom drawer was a manila folder labeled Emergency Docs. Birth certificates, old mortgage paperwork, a few legal forms we'd meant to sort years ago. I slipped in a new document I printed earlier that day, a notarized copy of our marriage certificate, and right behind it, the name and business card of a divorce attorney my buddy Mike recommended months back when his own marriage hit the rocks. That was the night I realized something. I wasn't just hurt. I was angry, yes, but deeper than that, I was clear. And clarity was power. The next day, I went to the print shop. I told Janine I was getting the seating chart laminated, which I did, but I also asked the guy behind the counter, a kid in his 20s with tattoos creeping out of his sleeves, if they still offered video services. Depends what you need, he said, yawning. I need to edit a slideshow, I said. Something memorable. He grinned. Retirement. Something like that. Back at home, I started gathering things. Old photos. Yes, our kids, her classroom, vacations. But also copies of the emails. Screenshots. I created a folder on my computer labeled Party Slides, and inside, 2 subfolders. For her, and for me. I decided on this. I wasn't going to just ruin her night. I was going to give her exactly what she wanted. One last round of applause. And then, I'd take the microphone. The night before the party, she was buzzing, full of energy. She spent 2 hours trying on different dresses. She landed on a deep green one I hadn't seen before. Bought it a few weeks ago, she said, smoothing it down over her hips. Do you like it? I nodded. You look stunning. She did, too. That was the hardest part. I didn't hate her. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But I didn't. I just didn't know who she was anymore. You're being so sweet lately, she said, tilting her head. Everything okay? Of course, I said. Feels like we've turned a corner or something, she went on, a little too quickly. Like things are better now. I just smiled. She reached out and touched my cheek. I was worried about us for a while. But now, I think we're okay. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. Instead, I leaned in and kissed her forehead. Me too. That night, I slept on the couch. Told her it was my back acting up. She didn't question it. In the dark, I pulled out the USB drive I'd hidden in the coffee table drawer and ran through the slideshow one last time. It started with her childhood photos, led into her early teaching days, some clips from home videos with the kids, and then, seamlessly, transitioned into the screenshots, the emails, the hotel confirmations. The very last image? A quiet message on a white screen. To my wife, who said I was too boring to notice. I noticed, and so did everyone else. I closed the laptop. The house was still. The party was just hours away, and so was the truth. The morning of the party felt normal, too normal. Janine was humming in the kitchen, wearing her retired and thriving apron while she arranged hors d'oeuvres on silver trays like royalty was coming. The sun was pouring through the windows, soft and golden, lighting up our kitchen like a magazine spread. She looked proud, accomplished, like someone about to receive a standing ovation. And she was, just not for the reason she thought. By then, everything was in motion. The night before, I'd made 3 phone calls, quiet ones. No drama, no emotion. The first was to Rachel, Janine's department secretary. Kind woman, salt of the earth. Always wore those flower print blouses and called me darling. I told her Janine wanted to surprise a few people at the party and had asked me to update the guest list. Rachel didn't blink. Of course, sweetheart, she said. Just email me who you need added. I gave her 3 names. 2 were colleagues Janine hadn't invited, including the guy she used to carpool with, the one who left the college quietly after rumors swirled around him, and a professional boundary issue. The 3rd name? Christine Martin, Martin's wife. She'd never met Janine in person, not officially, but I figured she had a right to attend. The second call was to the caterer. I didn't change the menu. I wasn't about to sabotage the shrimp cocktail or swap out the champagne for boxed wine. That would have been petty. No, I just asked for a few extra bottles to be chilled and requested the toast be served precisely 5 minutes before the closing slideshow. The 3rd call was to the AV guy. The college had its own tech setup for events like this. Big projector, wireless mic, smooth transitions. I told him I'd be bringing a USB stick with Janine's approved slideshow. He didn't need to know it had 2 versions. That morning, I dressed like I would for any celebration. Navy sport coat, light gray shirt, brown shoes. She wore the green dress again, the one that hugged her a little too well for a retirement event. Her hair curled softly around her shoulders, and her perfume, the one she used to wear only on anniversaries, lingered in the air. Big day, I said, straightening her necklace. She smiled. I couldn't have done this without you. You did a lot of it without me, I wanted to say, but I just nodded. As we loaded the car, she glanced at me. You're okay, right? You've been quiet lately. I shrugged, just thinking a lot. 34 years is a long time. She smiled. It is, but I'm glad we made it. Made it. Like surviving a marathon. I held my tongue. At the venue, the college's event hall, dressed up with white linens and gold streamers, things moved quickly. People trickled in. Staff, faculty, old students. Hugs, handshakes, small talk. Janine lit up like a Christmas tree, fluttering from guest to guest, sipping wine, basking in the glow of admiration. I stayed close enough to see, far enough to observe. I spotted Martin before she did. He showed up alone, wearing a smug, quiet confidence like cologne. He didn't look at me, didn't need to. He assumed I didn't know. That made it easier. Christine came 20 minutes later. She walked in with a girlfriend, someone I didn't recognize, and scanned the room like a woman on a mission. I nodded at her once, and she nodded back. That was our entire agreement. She said she'd handle the rest. As the clock neared 6:30, I slipped away and handed the AV guy the USB stick. Start this when Janine gives you the signal, I said. He gave me a thumbs up. Back in the crowd, Janine took the mic. She tapped it twice, clearing her throat. The room quieted. She thanked everyone, talked about her years of teaching, the students she'd never forget. She thanked me last, my rock, my steady hand, and everyone clapped. I raised my glass with the rest. And now, she said, smiling brightly, we've put together a little highlight reel of memories. Some photos from the journey. I hope it makes you smile. She turned to me, smiling. I pressed my thumb against the edge of my champagne glass. She nodded to the AV guy, and the lights dimmed. The room darkened as the projector flickered to life. A soft instrumental track played, something upbeat but forgettable. I'd left that part alone. Janine had picked the music herself. A mix of nostalgia and cheer. Seemed fitting for what was about to happen. The first few slides were exactly what people expected. Grainy photos of Janine in her early teaching days. Posed shots with smiling students. Staff Christmas parties from decades ago. The crowd let out little laughs, claps, and polite ahs. Janine stood beside me, glowing, one arm lightly resting on my shoulder. I could feel her body relax with each chuckle from the crowd. She thought the hardest part was over. Then came the shift. The photo faded. For a second, just black. Then a new slide appeared. White text on a plain gray background. Every story has a beginning. A few confused murmurs rose. Janine turned to me, brow furrowing. What is that? I didn't answer. The next slide, a screenshot. A Gmail interface. A message from Martin Gray, West District to Janine Langston. Subject, last Tuesday. Body, still taste you. Let's book that hotel again before he catches on. The room went silent. The music cut off. Someone in the back coughed. I didn't move. Janine stared at the screen like it might vanish if she blinked fast enough. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The next slide was a reply from her. God, I love how dangerous it feels. Can't believe he's still clueless. You're my escape. Can't wait for next time. Whispers started spreading like fire. Rachel from the English department gasped. A man from the IT team whispered to his wife, who looked straight at Janine with her hand over her mouth. Someone else muttered, is this real? And then louder, more distinct, Christine. She stepped forward from the sidewall, eyes locked on Janine. You looked me in the eye, she said, voice clear, steady. At the PDA meeting, you smiled at me. You knew. Janine's hand dropped from my shoulder. No, she croaked, eyes darting. I didn't. I took a step to the side, away from her, away from the spotlight that had just turned scorching. The slideshow kept rolling. Screenshots, hotel receipts. One email where Janine told Martin she'd lied about a faculty weekend, just to sneak away for 2 nights. Another where she laughed about how Tom still brings me flowers, poor guy. That one got audible reactions. People shifted in their seats. A few guests stood up. The head of her department actually walked out, muttering unbelievable under his breath. Janine reached for the mic. Stop, she said into the silence. Stop it right now. Someone hacked this. It's not real. I spoke, calm as ever. No one hacked it, Janine. It's your slideshow. You just didn't get to see the ending before tonight. She spun toward me, face flushed, eyes wild. You did this? You planned this? At my retirement party? I met her eyes. No, you did this. I just gave it a screen. Gasps, murmurs, a few phones were out now. Cameras recording. You humiliated me, she said, voice cracking. You lied to me. For months. She stepped closer. You're a monster. No, I said, still calm, still grounded. I'm a husband who got tired of being lied to in his own home. The slideshow ended on a final slide. White text again, on black. To the woman who said I was too boring to notice. I noticed, and so did everyone else. The screen faded. The lights returned. For a moment, the room was completely still. Then the AV guy unplugged the projector and began packing up. Janine stood frozen, her mouth working but no sound coming. Her cheeks blotched red, makeup cracking at the corners of her eyes. Martin had disappeared. Christine was already walking toward the door, not looking back. People began whispering again, moving, gathering purses and jackets. The party wasn't over. It was dead. Janine turned to me one last time. I can't believe you'd do this to me. I looked at her, really looked, and realized something. She wasn't sorry. Not really. She was shocked, embarrassed, but not sorry. You already did it to yourself, I said. Then I picked up my glass of champagne and raised it calmly. To the truth. I took one sip, set it down, and walked away. I didn't look back when I walked out of that room. Didn't need to. The silence behind me said everything. Not the stunned kind that holds its breath, but the kind that follows destruction, like dust settling after a building collapses. Outside, the air was cooler than I expected for a June evening. Crisp, quiet. The kind of silence I used to think was lonely. Tonight, it felt like peace. I reached the truck, opened the door, and sat for a minute without starting the engine. Just breathing, just letting it all sink in. 34 years. I thought I'd feel more pain, more doubt. But mostly, I felt clear. Back inside, Janine was probably still trying to salvage it. Maybe crying, maybe yelling, maybe scrambling to figure out who knew what, who saw what, who filmed what. Her whole life, or at least the image of it, had just cracked open like a dropped wine glass. And the thing was, I didn't feel the need to twist the knife. I wasn't out for blood. I just wanted the truth to sit there, plain and unshakable, where everyone could see it. She built the lie. I just flipped the lights on. My phone buzzed. One message. Rachel, department secretary. I had no idea. You didn't deserve that. I'm sorry, Tom. Truly. I stared at it for a while, then turned the phone off. I didn't go home that night. I'd already packed a duffel bag earlier that week. One pair of jeans, 2 shirts, my razor, and a notebook I hadn't opened in years. I drove out past the edge of town, where the streetlights thin and the stars get braver. My buddy Clint had a fishing cabin he rarely used. Told me once I was welcome anytime, so I took him up on it. When I got there, the porch light still worked. I unlocked the door with the key he hid under the rock like every cliché in the book. The place smelled like cedar and old coffee. I sat on the edge of the twin bed, stared at the wall, and listened to the frogs singing in the marsh behind the trees. It was almost too quiet, but I didn't miss the sound of her voice. I didn't miss the small lies, the sideways glances at her phone, the quick smile, quick excuse that used to come up when she thought I noticed something. That night, I slept like I hadn't in months. The next morning, I turned my phone on. 3 voicemails, 7 missed calls. All Janine. I didn't listen to any of them. I opened my email instead and sent a single message. To Janine Langston. Subject, next steps. Janine, you don't need to explain. I saw enough. The documents are ready. You'll be served by the end of the week. I won't be coming home. There's nothing there for me anymore. Tom. No rage. No name calling. Just facts. I called my lawyer next. He'd already prepared the paperwork. Divorce filing, division of assets, temporary separation terms. Everything was straightforward. The house was jointly owned, but I told him I didn't want to fight her for it. Let her keep it. Let her walk those halls and stare at walls we painted together. Let her lie awake in the bedroom where she whispered about hotels to another man. She'd think she won. She'd think I left with nothing. But here's what she didn't know. I had already set up a new account 2 months ago when I first got suspicious. Transferred my pension, my savings, and the old firefighter fund check into it. Legally, clean, quiet. The only account she'd see after I left was the joint one, half empty, with a polite withdrawal notice. I wasn't trying to ruin her, but I wasn't going to let her ruin me either. 2 days later, I got a message from a blocked number. It was her. Please. We need to talk. That was cruel, Tom. You blindsided me. Blindsided. Like she hadn't spent half a year sneaking around. Like I hadn't slept beside a stranger every night. I didn't reply. That was the moment I realized something important. I didn't know her pain. I didn't even owe her a conversation. I owed myself peace. And I had just started to taste it. The funny thing about silence is how loud it becomes when someone's desperate to be heard. Janine called me 26 times in 3 days. She left voicemails that swung from teary to furious to eerily composed. One even started with her saying, "Okay, I've been thinking, and maybe we both made mistakes." I almost laughed, not out of amusement, more like disbelief. 34 years, and that's what she landed on. I didn't respond. Not to her texts. Not to the email she sent 2 nights later with the subject line, "Can we at least talk privately?" Privately. She was worried about her image now. The video had circulated. I hadn't posted it, but someone had, probably a student or faculty member with a good view of the screen and an eager thumb. It hit the local whisper networks like a lightning bolt. By Monday morning, people weren't just talking, they were taking sides. She showed up at the college to find half her department politely avoiding eye contact and the other half actively ignoring her. I heard from Rachel, the secretary, that the administration suggested Janine step away quietly and not attend the retirement send-off brunch they'd originally planned for Friday. Too much tension, they said. Translation, she was now a PR problem. She texted again that night. "You've humiliated me in ways I didn't deserve. I've worked my whole life for that career, for that reputation." I didn't reply, because what she still didn't get, or wouldn't admit, was that she'd done all of it herself. I just made sure the lights were on when it happened. Back at the cabin, I was getting used to the quiet. I woke up early, made coffee on the old gas stove, took slow walks down to the water where the frogs still barked and the trees swayed without a care. I found a kind of peace there I hadn't felt in years. Not since before she started staying late, hiding her phone, lying with a smile she once reserved for truth. I bought a prepaid phone. Only 3 people had the number: my lawyer, my son, and Clint, the guy who owned the cabin. The rest of the world, including Janine, could keep calling the old line until their fingers bled. It was strange how fast clarity came once I removed myself from the noise. I didn't miss her voice. I didn't miss the house. I didn't even miss the routines. The Sunday morning paper, the dinners we barely talked through, the soft TV glow we used to share without really watching. All of it had turned into habits stitched together by assumption. But now, I woke up without tension in my chest. I didn't check for lies in the corners of a conversation. One afternoon, I drove into town to grab some groceries. At the checkout counter, the clerk, young guy, probably college-aged, gave me a long look. You're the guy from the video, right?" he asked, awkwardly. "The retirement party thing?" I nodded. He didn't ask for details, just handed me my receipt and said, "You've got guts, man. Whole place has been talking about it." Not in a bad way. I nodded again and left. It wasn't about being a local legend. I didn't want fame. I wanted distance. From her. From that version of my life. From the person I'd become while trying to hold together something that had already cracked wide open. That evening, I sat on the porch with a cold beer and thought about how easily I could have missed it all. How many men do? I could have kept trusting, kept playing the role, dying slowly in a life that wasn't mine anymore. Instead, I'd done the one thing she never expected. I let her go. Not with shouting, not with threats, with silence, with facts, with calm. She could scramble all she wanted, try to mend the public image, twist the narrative, cry in her wine while telling friends I overreacted. But deep down, she knew. The man she thought was too passive to act had walked away without flinching. And I wasn't coming back. It had been 8 days since the party. 8 days since the lights went down. The truth lit up a wall, and Janine's perfectly curated world cracked open like a dropped mirror. From what I heard, mostly through Rachel and a couple other folks I hadn't expected to hear from, things weren't going well for her. Her lover, Martin, went ghost within 48 hours. Didn't return her calls. Deleted social media. Word was his wife filed for divorce the day after the party. She'd seen enough. Janine, for her part, tried to play cleanup. Claimed it was a private matter that got horribly exploited. She hinted at emotional abuse, at being misunderstood, at needing space. The usual script. But people weren't buying it. It wasn't just what she did. It was how public it became. How smug she'd looked in those emails. How easily she'd spoken about me like I was some houseplant with a paycheck. That was the part no one could forget. The betrayal was bad, but the arrogance? That stuck. She'd become radioactive. Even the people who might have been inclined to defend her were staying quiet. Her department head called it a personal tragedy and left it at that. They let her keep the retirement benefits, mostly to avoid a lawsuit, but they stripped the send-off brunch, the plaque, and the speech. She left the college without a word. A week ago, she was the pride of the department. Now, just a cautionary tale. Meanwhile, I was staying busy. I'd found a little apartment on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, 1 bedroom, small kitchen, 2nd floor view of the hills. But it was mine. No memories in the walls. No ghosts in the corners. Just fresh paint and quiet mornings. The movers had already come. They packed only what was mine. The books, the tools, the old recliner she never liked, but I always did. I told them to leave the rest. Let her have it. I didn't want the couch we bought during our fresh start phase. I didn't want the silverware we picked out together, or the rug she insisted matched the energy of the space. She could have it all. Let her sit in that house, surrounded by the ruins of a life built on comfort and lies. But I wasn't done yet. A week before all this exploded, I had started making financial moves. Legal, measured, and clean. Our savings? Split evenly. That was fair. But I'd already created a separate account 6 months earlier. Quietly. My pension, firefighter's retirement check, and an old inheritance from my uncle had all been transferred into it long before the party. She'd never asked about it, never noticed the shift. She thought I was still coasting on the same shared nest egg she dipped into for spa weekends and hotel rooms. She was wrong. She got half of what was left in the visible account, but the rest? That was mine. Secured. Untouchable. The lawyer had drafted everything by the book. I wasn't trying to cheat her. I was just protecting myself. Something I should have done years ago. The papers had been served that Monday. She signed them on Wednesday. No fight. No screaming. Just a sharp, clean signature. Rachel told me Janine showed up to the college one last time on Thursday. Packed up her office. Didn't say goodbye. Just walked out. Apparently, she looked tired. Wasn't wearing makeup. Dressed in sweats instead of her usual heels and scarf. I didn't take any pleasure in that. Not really. But I felt something better. Closure. By Friday, her sister messaged me. We'd never been close, but she wanted me to know Janine had moved in with a friend. She'd left the house for now. She's not doing well, she said. I thought you should know. I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it. I didn't need updates on her condition. She made her choice. Now she could live with it. Me? I was doing just fine. I'd even started fixing up an old workbench in the garage of my new place. The kind of project I hadn't touched in years. I'd play music, drink coffee from a real mug, not one of her affirmation cups with stupid quotes on them. No lies, no noise, just the sound of peace finally taking root. I hadn't heard from her in nearly 2 weeks. Then, one Thursday morning, a knock at my apartment door. I didn't need to look through the peephole. I already knew. I opened it slowly, and there she stood, Janine, wrapped in a long tan coat, sunglasses pushed up in her hair, arms crossed tight like armor. Her face looked thinner, older. She hadn't worn makeup. That was new. Can I come in? She asked, her voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. I didn't move. Instead, I stepped out and pulled the door shut behind me. She blinked. You're not even going to let me inside. I think everything that needed saying already happened, I replied, in front of 100 people. Her jaw tightened. You blindsided me. I just looked at her. She ran a hand through her hair, eyes darting down the hallway like someone might be watching. Look, she started. I didn't come here to fight. I need you to know that it wasn't all fake. What we had. I messed up, but I loved you. I still love you. I leaned against the wall, arms folded. Not cold, just steady. Janine, I said, I spent 34 years giving you the best version of myself. You spent 6 months giving it to someone else. So forgive me if I don't take that sentence at face value. I panicked, she said, her voice cracking. When the kids moved out, when the house got quiet, I didn't know who I was anymore. He made me feel alive, I said. I read the emails. I know the script. That silenced her. She took a deep breath. I lost everything, Tom. My job, my reputation, friends, some of them won't even return my calls. You made sure of that. I shook my head slowly. I didn't make sure of anything. You did that all on your own. All I did was stop protecting the lie. A beat passed. Then she tried the last card she had. I miss you. I looked her dead in the eyes. Not with hate, not with love, with truth. No, I said. You miss who I was. You miss having someone steady while you played reckless. You miss the man who would have forgiven you. That man doesn't live here anymore. Her face broke. And for the first time since this whole thing started, I didn't feel pain watching it. I didn't feel the urge to comfort her. I felt finished. She tried again. Can we just talk somewhere? Maybe have dinner? We don't have to decide anything today. I stepped forward, close enough that she had to look up at me. You had your dinner, I said, with him. While I waited at home and made coffee for a woman who was already gone, she flinched. I unlocked the door behind me, turned the knob, and gave her one last look. This is the part where you go, I said. And I meant it. She didn't yell, didn't beg. She just stood there for a second longer, then turned and walked away. Her shoes echoed down the hallway like an ending. No words. No goodbye. Just a door that would never open to her again. I watched her disappear down the stairwell, and then I went inside. I didn't sit down and cry. I didn't replay the moment. I made a sandwich, opened a cold beer, set up my kitchen table, and ate in peace. That night, I pulled out the manila folder from my drawer, the one marked Final. Inside were the signed divorce papers. Stamped, filed, processed. My lawyer had finalized everything that morning. House, hers. Bank accounts, split. Pension, protected. Freedom, all mine. I added one last item to the folder, a photo from the night of the party. Not of her, of me, standing at the back of the room just as the final slide came up on the projector. Someone had sent it to me afterward. I looked calm, unmoved, in control, and I was. I slipped the folder back into the drawer and closed it. There was nothing left to fight over. No pieces to gather. No explanation needed. She had gambled everything on the idea that I'd never do anything. And now she knew too late that silence doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes, it means you're just waiting for the right time to speak. And when you do, it's the last word they'll never forget. I didn't hear much from Janine after that day in the hallway. Just quiet. Not the peaceful kind I'd found at the cabin. Hers was the heavy kind, The silence of someone whose voice doesn't matter anymore, not because it's gone, but because nobody's listening. She tried reaching out once more. A certified letter, neatly typed, formal, said she hoped we could reconnect in time, that she had started therapy, that she realized she'd been acting out of fear and wanted to find herself again. I didn't respond. I didn't even finish reading it. By then, her life had already changed in ways she couldn't undo. The first cracks came from the college. The administration, after trying to keep things quiet, finally made a public statement. Not naming names, they were too careful for that, but they announced a reevaluation of post-retirement honors and public recognitions. In other words, Janine wasn't getting that honorary teaching award they'd hinted at for years. No plaque, no lecture room named in her honor, just an empty goodbye and a white slate. The faculty stopped returning her calls. Even the ones who might have understood, who might have quietly empathized, they kept their distance. Because what Janine hadn't realized was how public her betrayal had become. The video? It didn't just stay in our town. It showed up on a teaching forum, then a Facebook group for adult learners, then on TikTok, where someone stitched it with a caption that read, "This man served 34 years with love. She served 6 months with a lie." The comments were brutal, but the worst part for Janine wasn't strangers judging her. It was that nobody rushed to defend her, not even her sister, who later admitted she'd warned Janine months before, "You're going to lose him, and when you do, it won't be a fight. He'll just leave." And that's exactly what I'd done. I didn't burn the house down. I just walked out and let her feel the draft. Martin, the man she risked everything for, he moved 3 counties over, got a new job. Rumor was he tried patching things up with his wife, but that failed after 3 months. No kids, no support system. He vanished. Good riddance. Janine tried going back to her real estate license, something she'd let lapse years ago when she started teaching full-time. But word spreads fast. No firm wanted to be associated with her name. Not because of morals, let's not pretend the world is that noble, but because of the optics. She wasn't just a cheater. She was that cheater, the one with the slideshow. She sold her car, downsized to an apartment half the size of our old living room, put the house up for sale shortly after. The irony? She got full ownership in the divorce. Thought it was a win. Thought I was being generous. What she didn't realize was that the house had always been a burden waiting to happen. It was oversized, over-leveraged, and desperately in need of a new roof. I'd stopped contributing to the HOA fees 3 months before the separation. She didn't notice until the fine showed up in her name. She tried blaming me, of course. Left a voicemail claiming I'd sabotaged her financially. I deleted it without listening to the end. There was nothing left between us. Not even anger. That's the part she never understood. I didn't want revenge. I wanted distance. Closure. A clean line between what I used to believe and what I now knew. She thought I would hate her forever. But I didn't. Because hate is still a kind of attachment. And I was done carrying her. Done explaining myself. Done trying to understand someone who saw my loyalty as a weakness. Now she was alone. Not just without me, but without the version of herself she'd tried so hard to sell. The respected professor, the admired wife, the clever woman who could juggle a secret life and a public one without anyone noticing. Well, people noticed. And when they did, she learned something about the world she lived in. Respect is rented, and betrayal costs everything.